Make your point on the News Hour. Join Arnab every night on the News Hour with your question. Ask your question and join the debate.
On the Autocar show today, Honda's BRV or Hyundai's Creta, which petrol automatic makes the cut? We welcome Ford's Mustang GT to India. Relive auto history with the patent wagon. And industry news on Autocar Confidential.
Now, when we have this kind of weather, what we really want from our cars is something that can wade through all the floods, deal with all the destroyed roads, and of course, the traffic madness that comes with the rains. So we're talking about monsoon machines, cars that are higher off the ground, cars that are strong and sturdy, and that are automatic. Well, with the BRV being a new entrant, we thought we'd pit it against the capable Creta and see which one comes out ahead. Both cars come equipped with a 1.5-litre petrol engine and auto boxes. Whilst the Honda looks at a slight disadvantage on paper with 119 HP and 145 Nm of torque against the Creta's 123 HP and 151 Nm of torque, out on the road, it's a different story. The Creta goes off the mark in a sprightly manner. But other than that, it really doesn't put its additional power to good use. Torque is concentrated into a small power band, and very often you find yourself mashing your foot to the floor to get the Creta to make a move on. And then you come up with nothing. The gearbox takes a while to react, and it's almost as if the engine is gasping for air. The Creta works best at path throttle and with lighter inputs, so it's the most comfortable in city conditions. Out on the highway, it falls short. The engine of the BRV has a nice wide torque spread, and power comes in as early as 2000 RPM. So when you put your foot on the throttle for an overtake maneuver, power is served up. The gearbox is quick to react to, and it keeps the car within the power band, so you don't really have to mash your foot down each time to extract power. The BRV makes light of driving in both city and highway conditions in comparison to the Creta. Though the acceleration doesn't feel as meaty, it does it in a more linear manner, making the best of available power. Both engines get vocal when pushed hard, but you hear the Creta protesting more often as you have to accelerate harder more often too. Now, a nice touch on the BRV is the paddle shift, but you have to put it in sport mode if you want it to hold the gear. In the drive mode, it irritatingly slips into a higher gear moments after you shift down, so best to keep it in sport if you intend to use the paddles. The Creta doesn't have a paddle shift, but it does have manual mode, and I found myself using that a lot to keep it in the power band. Now, the BRV feels lower to the ground and more car-like to drive, whereas the Creta feels more like an SUV. So the Creta provides the SUV image better, and it makes you feel like you're driving a bigger, tougher machine. Overall refinement of the Creta is better, and it's far more silent in the cabin. The BRV feels a little long whilst driving, and without parking sensors or a reverse cam, it's really difficult to judge when parking. But on the whole, when you're driving, the car-like feel has its advantages. The steering of the BRV is the better of the two. It's definitely the better weighted, and it's the one that gives you more confidence whether you're at high speeds in a straight line or whether you're cornering. The Creta steering is light, and the quicker you go, the less feel you get. Though the car goes around corners well enough, it really isn't as settled or as sure as the BRV, and you feel the BRV's composure even in its backseat. Now, at low speeds, the BRV does have a slightly firmer edge, so you do feel things filter through, but it's not really intrusive because the edges are blunted off. And as you pick up the pace, this is the better ride quality, overall being the flatter and more composed one. Legroom in the back of the BRV is marginally less than the Creta, but it's more than adequate and actually impressive considering that there is another row of seats behind it and some boot space. The seats have a slider and recline too, so you can get pretty comfortable. Still, it does have its shortcomings. You sit quite low to the ground and in an ease-up position here in the BRV, and space is less than the Creta, especially the width of the seat. But what's really nice is this huge window area with a sort of dip in the middle, which makes it open and spacious and airy. You also hear the BRV suspension at work more than the Creta, which is more silent. The back seat of the Creta is the more comfortable place to be, whether we talk about the cushioning of the seat, the under-thigh support, the recline angle. And then, of course, you have marginally more legroom. But the biggest difference really is the width of the seat, and 3 people abreast is more comfortable here. But the window line is quite high, so it doesn't feel as open as the BRV. As far as ride goes, in slower city conditions, the Creta has the edge. Ride quality of the Creta at low speed is good, it's supple, it doesn't let much filter through to the passenger at all. Overall, it's the Creta that offers the slightly more premium experience, be it the refinement or the plushness of the cabin. The interior of the Creta still impresses. I mean, even when you get on the inside, after a while, you still go, wow. It's a nice modern layout. I love the two-tone coloring. There's a nice finish to the central part of the console. You've got a touch screen. And of course, lots of storage spaces, not to mention an impressive feature list. The BRV's interior, though not as modern or as flamboyant as the Creta, is still good quality. The plastics on top of the dash are actually better, and the all-black theme with the metal highlights works well. The steering from the city looks good too, but it's the layout that's a bit odd. And the central part of the dash with the music system looks like an aftermarket solution. It's a tiny screen, but you do get Bluetooth and aux connectivity. Still, the BRV does hold its own trump card. Now, the BRV does have a distinct advantage over the Creta, and that's that third row. Yes, you get 2 extra seats, and they're very easy to get into. It's a single lever flip down. And once you're inside, space is pretty impressive. I mean, it's really got good legroom considering, there's 3 rows of seats, the middle row is spacious, and it is still a compact SUV. So I'm quite impressed. Yes, you do sit a little low to the ground and you are knees up, but it's not uncomfortable. The Creta, of course, has the bigger boot without that third row. But the BRV is versatile too. It's decent enough space for 2 strolleys or a large bag with the seats up, and then you can flip the seats down to open up more space. The Honda styling is probably its biggest sore point. It looks unnecessarily stretched from the side, and because of the kink in the doors, there's no getting away from the Mobilio heritage. But the nose and tail are all new. Up front, the squared-out bonnet, chrome-rich grille and angular headlamps give it a unique look. Round the back, the linked rear taillights are a good addition too. As an overall package, the design works reasonably well, but placed alongside the Creta, it comes across more MUV than SUV. It just lacks the visual appeal of the SUV it's up against, the Creta. There is little doubt that the Creta's square stance resonates very positively with most people who view it. Despite the squarer, taller profile, it still has those flowing, fluidic lines the Indian market has so grown to love. And the design just draws your eyes to it. Now, interestingly, despite the fact that the Creta stands visually way taller than the BRV, it is the BRV that has more ground clearance. Well, there's no two ways about it. The Creta is the one with the image. It's the more butch, more SUV-like car. And of course, it has that comfortable back seat, not to mention the rich and premium feel, the good quality interiors, and that impressive feature list. But the BRV puts up a great fight too. It doesn't look it, but it is actually higher off the ground than the Creta. Surprising, but yes, it is. And it has that engine with the wide spread of torque, which is easy to drive in traffic conditions and great for cruising out on the highway too. The gearbox is nice, the ride is flat and composed overall, and when you're behind the wheel, it's the one that gives you the better sense of security, whether we're talking about stability at high-speed straight line or around the corners. And of course, let's not forget the bonus that you get with the BRV, those 2 extra seats. It is a 7-seater. So considering that people are in the market for a petrol auto, they're going to be wanting to drive themselves, the BRV is definitely the better choice, and at a lakh less than the Creta, it's the more sensible one too.
Coming up ahead, up close with the Ford Mustang GT.
I'm at the Buddh International Circuit, and today is a big day because one of the absolute legends of the automotive world is going to be launched in India. It's the Ford Mustang. It's a car that really doesn't need much of an introduction, but I will tell you, it's one that has been in series production since 1964. Now, this is the latest generation of the Mustang, and for the first time, it's been made available in right-hand drive form, and that has qualified it for sale in countries like India. Ford has been dilly-dallying with its decision to bring the car to India, but it's finally here, and I'm going to take a spin in it around the BIC. I cannot wait. Before I get to anything else, can we just stop for a second and stare at this car? I mean, just look at it. It's just so beautiful. It carries that traditional Mustang look with such elan. India only gets the hardtop version of the Mustang, and though Ford calls it a fastback, it's more traditional coupe in its shape. But what a shape! Long bonnet, tight passenger cell and flowing tail. Ford has got it so right. There's also lovely detailing in the stretched back headlamps, and don't you just love how the tri-bar tail lamps hark back to the original Mustangs. The cabin has its pluses and minuses though. In Ford's own words, the Mustang isn't the most sophisticated of sports cars. What it has is a degree of rawness, and Ford believes that is integral to its appeal. So even when you get on the inside, don't expect to see the highest grades of leather or soft touch plastics everywhere. In fact, even the glove box cover, finished in hard plastics. But when you look at the dashboard as a whole, it does give you the feeling of being in a nice sporty car. It's got its classic details like the hooded dials, and what also adds a healthy dose of modernity is the new age touchscreen system. The front seats are typical Yank fare, so are large and comfy. I didn't venture into the back portion of the cabin though. Just a look gave me a sense of claustrophobia. There's not much you could fit into the boot either, thanks to the full-size spare wheel in there. But I'm digressing. Who buys a Mustang for practicality anyway? You buy it for good old-school fun. Which brings me to the heavy metal under the hood. The Mustang abroad is available with a range of engines, including a 2.3-litre turbo petrol EcoBoost. Has Ford got that to India? No. Has Ford got the V6 to India? No. What they have got is the real deal, the proper 5-litre V8 that makes 400 horsepower and 530 Newton meters of torque. This is proper American muscle. Enough of the introduction, time to get driving. Five laps around the BIC in the Mustang is all I get, but I'm itching to know what it's like. The notes come thick and fast. The engine is got so much torque. I mean, you can really just pull the car on and on without having to ever change the gears. Even on the circuit like the Buddh, there's just torque to pull you out of the corner. It's very nice, smooth, linear. And though not loud, that burble from the V8 makes for a great soundtrack. Still, the feeling is it's more relaxed cruiser than highly strung sports car. No complaints there. If there was a complaint, I would say the gearbox in auto mode isn't as enthusiastic as I'd have liked it to be. It doesn't downshift as quickly. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to shuffle through the 4 driving modes, nor did I get to try out the launch control system. This may be a muscle car meant for aero-straight drag strips, but the independent rear suspension, a first on a Mustang, has given this gen car some dynamic ability too. The steering very nice, it's got this whole old school sort of feel to it, very easy to point into the corners. The Mustang is not a sharp tool and rolls a bit too, but then it's not made for winding racetracks like the BIC. It's made for straight highways, long sweeping corners and covering big distances in short time. Now to the killer bit. Ford has priced the Mustang at 65 lakh rupees ex-showroom Delhi for a 400 horsepower V8 powered rear-wheel drive coupe with such incredible pedigree. That is actually a pretty good deal.
And after this break, relive auto history with the patent wagon and Autocar Confidential with Hormazd Sorabji.
Today at the show, we have Benz's patent wagon, the first car, the one that was launched in 1886. What's it like to drive? We're going to find out. Stick around.
Alright, at the outset, let me tell you this isn't the real thing. Built by UMS Technologies in Coimbatore, this near-perfect replica, however, is as close as you can get to the original. It's so close, in fact, Mercedes have something similar in their own museum in Stuttgart. The first thing that you notice when you walk up to this car is that there aren't too many familiar bits. Yes, the chassis is built out of steel tubing and the rear suspension is by leaf springs, like the Mahindra Bolero. There are, however, bits you just don't recognize. A strip of leather that pulls itself around the drum actually works as the brakes, and the single-cylinder engine faces forward. No modern car can, however, compete with one thing. It has 44-inch wheels.
Now the Benz patent wagon works on the same principle as petrol cars do today. It's called the 4-stroke cycle or the auto cycle, which is where the name automobile comes from and which is where Autocar comes from. This engine is a single-cylinder 900cc motor. That's the piston. That's the sleeve for the piston. That exposed bit there is a crankshaft. This here it does the job of cooling the engine. There's water in here. This is the carburetor. This huge thing here is a carburetor. And this tube here with the holes, well, that's like an emulsion tube. When you push the throttle, it supplies more fuel to the cylinder, and more fuel and more air means more power. So that's basically how it works. Not very, very different from what we have today.
There's no starter or starting handle. To fire it up, you have to spin the flywheel, and eventually, after a few tugs, the 1 horsepower engine fires. Idle is slow, and because it's a single cylinder, you can hear every power stroke. And unlike a modern car, it has a soft, friendly puff that for all practical purposes could be coming from a giant tea kettle.
Now normally in a car, you have a steering wheel and that helps you via a rack to point the wheels. But this is a simple single cycle wheel. So all you do is you point this tiller in the direction you want to go and the patent wagon goes in that direction. Direct steering, yeah, I'd say it has a direct steering. Now a leaf spring suspension is not normally associated with a good ride, but here, surprisingly, we aren't feeling too many of the bumps. It isn't that bad. As you can see, we aren't being jostled around and that's pretty amazing.
So it steers well and even rides well. But what's the power like? And can it go up slopes with just 1 horsepower?
Now it is a 900cc cylinder, but there's barely enough power to even pull up a slope like this, a gentle slope. What I'm doing right now is concentrating on getting it up this gentle slope, so I'm zigzagging a bit, and I'm sure that's something Benz must have done himself. Now I can't imagine what this must have looked like in 1886. The carriage propelling itself, this odd put sound coming. People must have just gone bonkers. And no wonder it scared people.
What a colossus Carl Benz's patent wagon must have been back in 1886. Fundamentally different from everything else around at the time, it established that the motor car or Autocar was workable, practical, and here to stay. This was a machine that changed the world, right up there with the discovery of fire, agriculture, the first aircraft, and modern day computing. In terms of automotive anthropology, this is Adam. What a privilege and honor it's been.
Hello and welcome to Autocar Confidential. Now this week we have news of yet another sub 4 meter SUV. In fact, it's yet another sub 4 meter SUV from Mahindra and Mahindra. Yes, M&M is going to launch a sub 4 meter Bolero. That's right, the Bolero this time has been given the chop and it's going to be under 4 meters. But where does it fit with all the others? You've got the TUV 300, you've got the Nuvo Sport. Well, this one is going to get a lower powered engine around 80 HP and the focus is going to be on fuel economy. And Mahindra hopes that this is going to expand the market. They've got a lot of faith in the sub 4 meter SUV segment, as we can see. So let's see how it does when it's launched sometime next month. Well, that's it from me in Confidential, but stay tuned to the Autocar Show.